Welcome to the American Institute of Healthcare Professionals video on empathy in the counseling relationship. And this video is going to take a deeper look at the therapeutic relationship that exists between counselor and client from a more person-centered approach stemmed and founded in the teachings of Carl Rogers. So what we want to first identify is what is the difference between sympathy and empathy? What are the differences and how do we as counselors show these types of sentiments? And I think the best way to understand that difference is in sympathy, we are more looking at. In empathy, we are existing within. So a person who is sympathetic would be someone who feels sorry for someone. For instance, if you watch on the news a hurricane that might have ravished the South, and you feel sorry for those individuals, that is sympathy. If you're actually a crisis responder on the ground with these individuals and you feel their loss and you walk with them and you really feel this anxiety and total hopelessness and you walk with them in those feelings, that's empathy in itself. So empathy is, in the therapeutic relationship, something that is feeling what others are feeling and also trying to understand how those emotions are affecting that person. It's not a cognitive thought process in itself, but it is a natural connection with the client. So Carl Rogers emphasized this type of person-centered approach where the empathetic therapeutic relationship exists with under three pillars: that of empathy, that of genuineness, and that of unconditional positive regard. And these concepts will continue to be applied throughout this short video and how they help truly facilitate change within an individual through this therapeutic relationship between counselor and client. So empathy is not feeling sorry for someone like sympathy, but it's actually sojourning and understanding the pain. It doesn't involve a lecture, whether or not the person deserves what occurred or not. And it's not a judgment because the individual's not there to judge. It's not even a spiritual direction session where you are giving a blueprint, directions to someone, where you're dogmatically defining what is right and what is wrong. But it is merely an attempt to understand the individual, to better then be able to help them facilitate change in an autonomous way that respects their decision-making process and makes it their own within itself. So empathy, when genuine, builds trust, and it also strengthens the actual therapeutic relationship because it helps the counselor understand the struggles and views of the client, and the client sees that effort, and that effort means everything to a client. Seeing that someone is actually not just there being paid to listen in one ear and out the other, but is actually taking a true account of their situation and trying to better understand it. Now, unconditional positive regard is an important principle within Carl Rogers' therapeutic relationship. It is a fellow pillar with empathy. Unconditional positive regard is something that allows the counselor to accept the client in their fullness of who they really are, at least at the given moment. Now, it doesn't mean that the counselor has to condone or agree with what the person does, their lifestyle, their values, their belief. But the purpose here is, again, not to judge, not to define, but to help heal. And unconditional positive regard is a tool with empathy to help heal. Now, unconditional positive regard has various qualities that you want to display when trying to help someone. First is warmth and a real genuine charity. Remember, again, genuineness is a key concept, is a key pillar. So having that warmth and genuine charity of that, I care what happens to you, and I want to understand what occurred and how to better help you. That type of warmth and genuineness goes a long way in a therapeutic counseling relationship. Another quality of unconditional positive regard is acceptance of the person. Again, whether that person meets our standards, is living a lifestyle we agree with, is irrelevant. Spiritual direction is in a different type of counseling where maybe our opinions, maybe our idea of what is right and wrong is utilized. But when it comes to therapeutic counseling in itself, we're not there to do that. We're here to heal, to help individuals heal, and to help individuals on their own discover where they need to be. Finally, prizing is an important element of unconditional positive regard. And prizing is a building of the client's self-esteem and achievements. So many times a client in counseling feels very bad about themselves. There's a lot of bad things that has happened. And unconditional positive regard through prizing helps individuals see their strengths and their achievements and how to build self-esteem with that and to build self-worth and to push forward. All important ways to help them become more resilient and to find change in itself. Now, just because we are here to unconditionally meet the needs of our client, which is quite different than conditional. Conditional means I want you to do this, I want you to do that. And if you don't, or I want you to believe this certain way, or I don't approve of this, and if you continue doing this, then I won't see you. That's a condition of positive regard, which is not in the therapeutic relationship. Instead, unconditional positive regard lets all those things go because we're focusing on healing, whether we fall 1,000 times or not. We're looking for healing. Now, that doesn't mean that counselors do not empathetically challenge their clients. And I think that's an important distinction between telling somebody they're wrong, I conditionally will accept you. You can, in a way, through empathy, empathetically challenge an individual in a kind and loving way that makes them think about what they're doing. When change is forced, coerced, or preached, Carl Rogers saw that there was resistance in the facilitation of change. So within the therapeutic relationship, for true change to occur, the client needs to acknowledge or be brought to a point of acknowledgement, not necessarily being told or preached to, but being led to an illuminating moment where they understand and acknowledge their situation, and then autonomously take ownership of the plan of action to promote that change. And when a client takes ownership, this is when true change happens because they're involved. Similar to a diet. If someone is forced onto a diet, they don't believe in it. They're being forced. If they understand a new lifestyle and understand the value of nutrition and incorporate it into their life, their being, their very meaning of life, then that change has a long-term chance of success in itself. Now, if we want to display this empathy in counseling to get these types of changes, there are various strategies and techniques that we must employ in itself, as well as qualities. And such qualities as genuineness and truthfulness. Again, genuineness is one of the pillars of the therapeutic relationship with empathy and unconditional positive regard. So being genuine and truthful creates an environment of confidentiality, of security, of an ability to grow off of each other. Secondly, humility. And that's an openness to learn about the client and not know all the answers. Instead of having a direction already planned, it's an uncharted trek, an uncharted journey where the client and the counselor walk step by step together. And the humility of the counselor to learn about their client instead of defining their client before even really knowing them. Third, patience and acceptance. And those are parts of unconditional positive regard, showing that acceptance, showing that patience and change, not having it be conditional. Conditional to the point where an individual has to meet these standards in order to be valued. If they feel unconditional positive regard, they're going to continue to dig deeper and take more responsibility themselves instead of it being forced upon them. Some micro skills to consider: matching emotions, tones, and expressions. This is important in counseling because it shows that you are focusing. You are using your focusing attending skills. And in focusing, you are understanding the emotions that are being shown to you. You're able to see how inner emotions are displaying themselves in the physical manifestation of the person. And you're matching those tones, showing that you are also paying attention. Sometimes naming the emotion of a client can also help them hear it out loud. And that's why during focusing, we utilize paraphrasing and restating of emotions and maybe soft declarative statements. And in doing so, the client can sometimes hear what they are saying. Now, sometimes we need to be open to correction without dismay or feel like we have been shown up by saying something that was incorrect. Instead, we need to look as if we're in a state of discovery ourselves. And if we say the wrong emotion, then we apologize and continue on. Or we question, say, is this what you're feeling? And maybe instead of making a complete statement. Sometimes a soft declarative statement is really strong. Other times it can have a client correct you. But usually if a client corrects you, they're not going to be upset. They're happy that you're listening, that you're paying attention. But when these words and feelings are said out loud, it opens the dialogue. And that's why it's important within the empathetic confrontation via reflections where you restate to the client what they just said. They're able to hear it. They're able to understand it for the first time. And then in doing so, maybe they say, well, maybe that doesn't make sense. Maybe there was some cognitive dissonance between the individual, what they felt as compared to what happened. Maybe an individual felt shame or guilt about an incident, which they really shouldn't feel. But within the empathetic relationship, instead of calling them out for it, we simply and gently push the individual, guide the individual like a light wind on a sailboat to let them come to the conclusion. And again, through that empathetic confrontation, then they take ownership. They see the need to facilitate the change itself. Continuing, we want to avoid assessments. The assessment attitude can really put a patient or a client very in a state of unease. They begin to feel like they're being watched, observed. Too many why questions. They feel like they're being quizzed. So in empathy, instead of assessing, we're walking with, because we don't know the outcome yet. We're learning it with every simple open-ended question or with every statement of emotion that is expressed. Avoid me too statements or must feel. Again, that's putting power and authority over a lot of these individuals when we say you must feel. And when we say me too, it might lessen their experience. Remember, this is about empathy. It's about walking with them and helping them understand. And finally, utilize prizing moments to help build self-esteem, like we spoke about in the previous slide, to rebuild that self-esteem, to let them see the resiliency they have and the qualities that they possess that can help them facilitate change itself. So what we see within this whole therapeutic relationship is not merely passive, lack of guidance type counseling. It's actually very person-orientated, that utilizes empathy, that utilizes focusing on the emotions of the individual to help them come to conclusions on their own to facilitate long-term change. And that's the purpose of it. It's not a system or an approach that denies that an individual needs help or that an individual may be wrong in their assessment, possibly. It is more so a way to help facilitate change internally for long-term success itself. And empathy, genuineness, and unconditional positive regard are three of the pillars in this therapeutic relationship that you need to employ in your counseling to better help individuals move forward in life. We are AIHCP. We offer a multitude of behavioral healthcare certifications. Our link is below. Our number is 330-652-7776, and our email is info@aihcp.org. I'd like to thank you for listening, and have a good day.